I don't know what you were doing, but you were laughing to yourself as you were typing.
You know how there's like, what is the game? You play a game. Oh no, it's uh, you get the fortune cookies in a Chinese restaurant. And you're always
Hmm.
supposed to add in bed to the end of it. It's supposed to make it really funny.
Sure.
So I was thinking that every time we write a headline now on Threat.com, we could add for some reason to the end of every headline, and it would just make it really funny. No, okay. How you doing, Brad?
On this episode of What's Going On Inside of Paul's Mind. It's,
Well, I was just typing into Mehdi just wrote something like Microsoft releases a mid-level version of the Surface Go, and I was like, for some reason.
for some reason. These are,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, it's that surface level. To get it as a pun. Whew, what's going on, buddy?
Give Paul a shovel and he will never stop digging.
Yeah, he'll make a dike and then he'll make a lake. Yeah. Yep.
We are off to a banging start here, but actually, this was going to be a scoop for yesterday, and then I got to use my famous phrase of "damn you fully."
Yeah, you got Foleyed.
I did. Mostly, I blame Microsoft as I do for many things because I tried to get a comment or whatever from them about this. But Javier Soltero, if that name does not sound familiar, you might be familiar with Acompli. And if that name doesn't sound familiar, if you're using Outlook on iOS or Android, you are using his app, which Microsoft bought 4 years ago, which...
Yep.
Yikes. That does not feel like 4 years ago. Earlier this year, then he took over Cortana. And then I scooped last week, I think it was last week, that Microsoft was putting Cortana under Office. And Javier is saying, see you later, Microsoft.
Two questions of sorts. I guess they're sort of rhetorical questions, but based on what you just said, you noted that Soltero, his company was purchased by Microsoft 4 years ago. How long did it take his stock options to vest, do you think? 4 years?
I bet it was about 4 years in a day.
Yeah. And the other one was, I don't remember the exact date, but it seemed like a lifeline of sorts when he took over Cortana earlier this year. And maybe, I don't know how much time we have today, but perhaps you could enumerate through the many successes that Cortana has had since then.
Whoa.
Yeah. You know what? Well, I unfortunately, people misunderstand this, and they also kind of misremember history. I had some guy on Twitter, I think, said something to me yesterday, like, "Well, you never liked Cortana anyway." It's like, whoa, hold on a second. First of all, I'm a realist, right? I mean, I thought Cortana was a great idea. I loved Windows Phone, but unfortunately, those two things together kind of made for a disaster of sorts. And Cortana's not taken off in the marketplace. I stopped liking Cortana when Microsoft stopped keeping it up to date compared to the other assistants in the market, right? This is not, I just don't like stuff that Microsoft does, or I randomly don't like certain things. Like, Cortana's been a dumpster fire. And, you and I, a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, talked to Ryan Gavin, remember, about the strategy for Cortana. Nothing happened. Well, they released one smart speaker, I think, at the end of that year. This past year, some other publication had the same conversation with some other guy from Microsoft. I'm starting to think that the Cortana position at Microsoft, like running that, is what like Bing used to be. It's like Siberia. It's like what Windows Mobile was, right? Remember when Sinofsky took over the Windows group, a lot of the longtime Windows guys left or were forced out, really, and a lot of them ended up on Windows Mobile, which at the time was the industry's worst joke. And
at that time,
it had some. Windows Phone was obviously innovative and interesting for quite a while, but they at Microsoft, I mean, there are always these kind of luckless products, and it's like you hate to see someone good end up there, and he's good. Like Soltero is a good guy and obviously an excellent engineer and everything. And when he went there, I'm like, this is the end of his career. I'm like, there's no way he's not going to fix this.
Yeah, and I mean, look at what they did to keep Nat Friedman. Probably, I mean, they bought GitHub.
Oh yeah, because he's another guy. You kind of get the idea. Like, okay, I've done the big company thing for a couple of years now. Let's It's time to move on.
Yeah. And
Although
then,
I don't know, Xamarin was never owned by Novell, were they? Why do I have that in my head? Were they ever associated with Novell?
I don't think so.
No. I was trying to remember if he was ever associated with a big company before. I can't remember. But
I mean, there's
but
a possibility, but
yeah, it doesn't really matter. The point was, Microsoft is a good steward for Xamarin. There's no doubt about it. And a lot of those guys were kind of idealistic and would be involved with a standalone company like that. Zimian before that, and Xamarin, whatever.
Yep.
They just don't. It amazes me when people stay at Microsoft. People like that.
Yeah. I mean, well, Terry Myerson was one of the rare kind of exceptions there, right? His company was bought, and then he started on Exchange, and then moved up to phone.
It was a long time ago, but
yeah.
Yeah. I never knew who Terry was until Andy Lees left or was forced out or whatever. That guy was a bozo. But the guy before Terry who ran Windows Mobile or Windows Phone or whatever it was called at the time, Windows Phone, I guess. Terry engaged in some kind of a palace coup. Well, I mean, internally he was kind of
he did.
But he was not he was kind of like Gabe Ball. Like Gabe Ball was a guy who had been working on Windows engineering for 2 decades. I have interacted with so many people over that period of time. And when I was introduced to him at that Windows 10 event in October 2014, he was one of the guys I met. And I'm like, I've never heard of this guy. And they were starting the Insider program and everything. And he's like, yeah, I've been here for like 17 years, whatever the figure was at the time. I was like, okay. I was like, but he's been working on Windows, he's been building Windows had been at that point for 10, 15 years, whatever it was.
Well, I mean, and look at Gabe post his leaving his role at the Insider. I mean, you never hear from him anymore. I mean, he occasionally pops in on Twitter and says, look at this thing we launched, and then goes back away.
But you know what? I think for a guy like him, who's an engineer type, and I think he was a little uncomfortable with the role he had, the public role, and the sudden fame. He probably told this story, but when like that Wazor guy, Wzor, whatever he is, who actually I've not heard from in a long, long time, come to think of it. He always makes those crazy graphics of like the people on the Insider team, and he makes like what looks like it's like album art for a build or whatever. And he would do these like Photoshop things, like pictures of Gabe Ball, and he's wearing like a king's crown or something, or he's in some goofy, Photoshop thing. And for a guy like Gabe, I mean, that was like, holy crap, like that. I mean, that stuff was just scary. Like he's just a private person, So I'm sure he misses it in some ways, not that part of it, but him leaving the Insider program or not being the public face of it, to me makes sense for that kind of guy.
Sure. Other things that are going on, Paul. If you bought PUBG, you got screwed out of $30 because apparently you can get it for free right now.
Yeah, and this was the timing of this is interesting. Microsoft must have known for some months that PUBG was coming to PlayStation. And speaking of anniversaries, right? Like Soltero 4 years, PUBG 1 year. I think it was December 12th off the top of my head. I think was the date. It released as a console exclusive on Xbox. It was in preview for the next 10 months of that first year, which is incredible. It was, value priced. I'll give them credit for that. It wasn't super expensive as far as Xbox games go. But I don't know, even from day one, didn't you always kind of feel like this is definitely going to PlayStation? Like, right? There was always like this feeling like this was going to happen. So hopefully this won't be an uncomfortable comparison. But I would say based on the way most games perform on Xbox One X in particular, I bet it does. I'm curious. I'm just curious to see how this thing
I know where you're going. If this thing ports over to PlayStation, it's like a stick of butter playing with.
It's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's typically the experience when, at least on the Xbox One X, that the PlayStation version for some reason is much better. But I will, now we're going to have that uncomfortable comparison. So we'll see what that looks like.
We will, I'll be real sad if it's actually better because, well, I'll just be sad.
Yeah.
And then kind of wrapping things up here, there's a new, we already talked about the mid-range Surface Go, I guess, or whatever. I think this was like a Costco exclusive for, 3 months or something like that, and now it's available everywhere.
It's kind of, I think this machine is worthless, but if it's kind of the sweet spot, I hate to even use that term for Surface Go, but when you look at the available configurations, it was like the one that kind of made the most sense because you want to get the most RAM, and I don't think the storage matters all that much these days. But you want to hit 128, obviously. Okay, like that's the to me that's the one that always kind of made sense. You may know I don't pay too much attention to this stuff, but this is this the standalone tablet for 500, or is it does it include the type cover?
I don't know, actually. It was a bundle, I think, from Costco.
I thought it was a bundle on Costco, too, yeah. Because so I hope they include the type cover, because at that point, I mean, I guess you could make a... Like, if you can spend $1,200 on a base MacBook Air, $500 on a base Surface Go, like a decent Surface Go, I guess, or semi-decent Surface Go. Okay. Maybe it's at least in the ballpark.
Yeah, I don't think it actually includes the keyboard.
It's too bad. So what's that, $99 or something for that?
Because I believe it's $499, 128 gigs with 4 gigs of RAM. I think that's what it is.
Yep.
And it's out of stock.
It's a bestseller.
Or they never had any stock, maybe.
Brad, a little something about Surface stock.
Yeah.
Do you think? I think they're taking a slightly more conservative view of stock these days.
I think I was joking with Paul on Twitter that I have to keep all my replies to him congenial because he has the ability to delete my book.
Sure.
So
well, okay, but that would be detrimental to me.
Yeah.
So that's the one. We're not doing a murder suicide here. So
that is that would be an appropriate description. Because I think I'm about 3 chapters behind you on the editing.
Yeah,
I think you're right around you just passed the write-off stuff, so somewhere around there.
Oh no, I'm well past that.
Are you?
I'm about halfway through the book. I would say chapter-wise. I don't know how long the chapters are, but
I think the length of the chapters, I think near the beginning of the book, are longer than the end.
It's right on the cusp of actually, I kind of like I shouldn't talk too much about the book. I don't know. I don't want to ruin it. But I mean, the sequence of events is such that the next chapter is going to be like Surface Pro 3. And that's where things really turn around for Surface. And I'm like, I got to get through this, So the next chapter is about the NFL. And I'm like, God damn it.
Which that's a good story.
No, I know. It's a great story. But
yeah, like if you're waiting to hear about the Surface Pro 3. But the NFL story, I'm not going to dive into it.
No, but it's a good story.
It is.
Actually, it's a kind of a good way to do it too, because you're kind of setting up this future thing, and a lot of Surface, it's true of any product, any company, any history of anything really. I mean, there's a lot of happenstance, and there in the case of something like Surface or any product, the company that makes it, the people involved, they can make mistakes, they can do things right, they can get lucky sometimes. There's things that just kind of happen, and these things are all very interesting. And it's a confluence of things. I don't know. I haven't gotten to it. I'm sure it's in the book. But one of the interesting controversies I remember at the time was when the NFL deal happened. They were actually using Surface Pro 2s, even though Microsoft had just started selling Surface Pro 3. And no one ever said anything. But you could see the image of the device. It was 16 by 9, like clearly, and of course it was surrounded in a spaceman suit worth of.
It's got to be safe from Bill Belichick, who is the first.
Let alone exactly, like an actual football player could snap in half with their hands.
Yeah, if I could include GIFs in a book, I would have, because there's a great one of Belichick just looking at this thing and just going, wow. But
as Microsoft will tell you, that was a Wi-Fi problem. But.
Yeah, it's a learning moment, I think, as a lot of people described it.
Yep.
So. I don't know. You got anything else for today on this wacky Wednesday?
No, it's quiet today, actually. So, no, not really. I'll continue my device write-ups. I'm going to be gone this weekend. Like I said, I don't know to what days now anymore, but I'll bring stuff with me so I can keep going. And I don't know. I'm surrounded by stuff. I don't know. It's like just piling up. I'm going to make a little fort out of my devices and hide inside.
Well, your cat will. Maybe you should box your cat in.
Speaking of which, actually, just because I mentioned this the other day, the flooding from over the weekend, right? Closed the school, remember? That school has been closed ever since. They've not opened it yet. So she didn't go to school Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we'll see. We haven't heard yet on tomorrow, but this was actually pretty serious. Like,
Paul's gonna have to pick up homeschooling. You're gonna have to become a math teacher.
That's what I said. So we're gonna have to homeschool you because, like, in Massachusetts, like this type of event would have required my daughter to go to school through July, and in Pennsylvania, they're like, we'll just get a waiver from the state. You don't have to take it. Don't worry about it. We'll just take the week off, and in the middle of November for no reason, and it'll be fine.
Well, fantastic, and it is very lovely. This is another tree in the neighborhood, right before all the leaves fall off and land in my gutter. But
that's what's been happening too with all the rain, right? Because it's beautiful. The trees are changing, but the ones that were kind of on the edge, that we get like this deluge, and now it's just all like winter tree stuff.
Yeah, and the cold weather's coming too, by the way. I don't know if you've... Yeah.
Yep, it is.
Yep, so, all right, folks, well, that wraps it up for today. Today is Wednesday. I never know what day of the week it is anymore. And we'll be back here tomorrow on Thursday, and hopefully some more fun stuff happens. Oh, wait, nope. Well, let the air out of the balloon. We will not be back tomorrow because Paul's driving.
Well, am I? This is the thing. I might be driving. Now I might be driving on Friday. See, this is confusing matters. If I drive on Friday, I'll obviously I'll be around for the live show, but I don't know. I may not literally know until. I might not know until tomorrow. I might be packed, ready to go, and I'm like, I'm going to stay here another day.
This is like the opposite of your France trip, where you thought you had an extra day. And
yes. Well, I could stay in Boston until Monday, I guess. I don't want to, but I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see.
All right. Well, so we might be back tomorrow. We might not. If we're here, we're here. If we're not, well, we're not. So good luck figuring out our schedules because we don't even know. But have yourselves a wonderful Wednesday.